All right,
Yeah.
today is Wednesday, March 25th. The year is 2026. This is No Easy Answers. I'm your host, Jules Taylor, and today I have no easy answers for you. I got Freddy G here on his fresh off his return from Cuba, and I got a bunch of questions for you. But Freddie, how you doing since the last time we talked, man? Have you you seem like I don't know, there's not a change in time, so it's not jet lag, but I'm sure you didn't get much sleep while you were in Cuba.
Yeah, I got because I'm a night person. First of all, Cuba was amazing. I'm so glad I went. So amazing. Saw a lot of stuff that like I hadn't seen before, felt a lot of things. I definitely learned more about Cuba, but a lot of what I feel like I know about Cuba is from reading and then also talking to people on the trip. The idea that some white guy from Queens, would go visit a country for 3 days and then know like to what extent it's communist or how they should change the government, like I'm not going to overrate what I saw. It's kind of went to highlight what's going on there and also to kind of experience a little tiny bit of it. But I had to. I mean, I got on a crazy night schedule before a few weeks before I went. I was on that, so I had to reverse my sleep schedule. And then when we were in Cuba, we had things early in the morning every day, and people stayed up late, and I slept like 4 or 5 hours. And the second I got back to Queens, I just started completely crashing, and I slept pretty much the entire first day back.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a little FOMO. It's a little bit of just wanting to push yourself while you're there at these times to like get every bit of, your trip in, whether things start at the morning, at night, and the consequences. Just you just don't get much sleep while you're out there. But you're back and I'm happy to see you, man. And so maybe starting with like there's probably a lot of like a difference between what you expected versus reality on the ground is. So maybe what's your first realization that like, about Cuba that you maybe couldn't have understood before you went there?
So yeah, I was expecting any electricity we had as a bonus. So we land in the airport. Now I've landed in a couple airports in the Caribbean, and a lot of times you have to walk from the plane like on the runway. And Cuba had the sky, whatever it's called, the thing where you walk into the terminal. So that was a good sign. And basically the entire time I was in the airport, the lights were on. And also that maybe because that day the country wasn't in blackout, but it's like this. I was like, this just feels very normal here. Like I'm in Cuba. I mean, I don't have access to the internet or whatever in the airport, but yeah, it's like, oh, this is just this. And also, like the airport looked freshly painted. Maybe these things, in hindsight, maybe these things are kind of thing, but like it just didn't seem like it seemed like this, like they, like things are, it was a well-oiled machine, the airport when I first got in. So I was like, I'm like comfortable here. And I'm just really glad that like this isn't things aren't as crazy as I thought. And that made me instantly comfortable. I'm really glad that I came.
I mean, it's funny how like the discrepancy between, how we imagine it and how reality occurs. In regards to Cuban airports, I mean, surely the airports in Cuba are working better than the American airports, or at least as far as I can see right now. I mean, I have a friend that just went to Puerto Rico and they uh, showed up like 5 hours early and ended up spending like 4 hours in the gates. So depending on whatever airport you go to right now in the States, I mean, things are falling apart there.
Oh yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it's like
I overall had good travel luck. So my Miami flights kind of worked out well. I didn't get hassled coming back into the country. But I've been hearing some tough things, and I think I just got really lucky. I also had a good amount of time in Miami both times, so I didn't have to rush for the connecting flights.
Uh, and what you're talking about is what Chris Smalls, Katie Halper, and one other person. Um, what do you know about that right now? Because it's as the time of we're speaking right now on the 25th of March, 7:15 p.m. Uh, I understand that Chris has not been released. I know.
I believe I heard everyone has been really. I've been kind of hearing about stuff in chats. The thing is, and yeah, I mean, I can't speak for everyone who's detained. Chris and Katie, as far as I mean, I met them both. They're both American. I'm pretty sure they're both American citizens. Whatever. So they can kind of arbitrarily hold an American citizen for a little bit, but I don't think they can actually keep you from getting back in the country. So they can kind of waste your time and scare you and scare everyone around you a little bit. And it's quite uncomfortable. And then they may also try to search your phones in some ways. There's different cat and mouse stuff with that, making it harder or whatever. So they went through that today. I came back a couple of days earlier and didn't go through that. And that just stinks. And it's unfair that everyone could do the same thing and everyone's all citizens, and then some people get hassles and some people don't. Not based on any suspicion of a crime. Like there's nothing, you know what I mean? So it's just that it certainly doesn't feel like equal rights or democracy or any kind of principles that people stand for. But I believe it was all just a delay and everyone is fine. And the trip couldn't have been more legal and within the bounds of what we're allowed to do.
Yeah, I just went over to Twitter to see because I regrettably forgot the third person's name. His name is Thiago Avila, as the third person with Katie and Chris Smalls. As a reminder, Chris Smalls was detained by the IDF and assaulted. Uh, you know, it's this is all fucking terrible. And the U.S. government is really shitty for doing this sort of thing. But I hope that you're right in the sense that it was just kind of detaining, scared tactics, waste your time for a little bit. I seem to have seen a video from somebody else who traveled in the convoy where they took his laptop. Some people had their phones taken, to my understanding. And so, and there's crazy shit that, like, I mean, it's not just your run of the mill apps that these immigration folks have on their belt. It's like they've got specialized surveillance apps that can basically download your whole phone by sending a text message to it. That kind of
Mhm.
technology is really nasty. And so I'm hoping that, the folks that they did, apprehend or commandeer property from, maybe they wipe their devices or something before doing that
Yeah,
sort of stuff.
there's different things people can do. We had different briefings before. There was a lawyer with us kind of coming back. So like there were lawyers to help. But yeah, you're never obviously under an obligation to bring your phone anywhere. So you don't have to bring your phone when you leave the country. You could get a different phone. You could bring no phone. And yeah, if you do bring your phone, there might be some ways, but I mean, they have a lot of technology, and it is that always connects to Israel. A lot of that technology is developed in Israel. There's a book and also a doc, the Palestine Laboratory, that goes into some of it. So
Hmm.
yeah, it is scary. Yeah, everything does kind of relate to Israel Palestine. So yeah, it's because yeah, obviously Trump and Rubio didn't want us going there, even though we were allowed to, and there was no attempt to kind of stop us from going.
Who'd you sit on the plane next to, man?
It was kind of cool on the way there. I was yeah, so I was on the same plane as Hassan Piker. I was too shy to talk to him, but like at one point I let him walk by me to come back from the bathroom, and I was like, now we're gonna be besties, but I doubt he noticed me. There's a guy who's been on Hassan Piker, Brace Beld, and I was in the row with him and his producer, so I talked to them a little bit. And I did get a picture with Chris Smalls. I met Katie Halper was more in the group I was in, so I got to spend some time with her. She's very nice. And some other, I met some other bigger influencers from that I knew from Twitter, like Guy Christensen and this guy Christian Divine, who I was a fan of. So that was cool. Yeah, and people were generally nice. And the nice thing with the left leaning trip is that it is about like kind of being egalitarian.
Yeah,
So
I
that was
mean,
cool.
that's really cool, man. Did you meet Ryan Grimm by chance?
I met him like after the trip. We just both happened to be in the Miami airport, and I said hi really quickly. I hate to like bother people, so like I usually if I can find a way to talk to people, but if I don't try to go up to people as a fan. But we were next to each other on the line, and I'd heard he was approachable. A lot of the people who were cool on the trip there was a lot of Cubans for Cuba. I talked to them a lot. None of them were like creators, or whatever. They were all like DSA folks, and they have real jobs. And learning from them. I met a guy named Sammy from Bethlehem who lives in the West Bank. He can't go back since the Iran war, but he was there. Some other Palestinian people. So I was talking a lot to them, and yeah, the majority of the convoy was people with real jobs. It was a small percent were creators. So it was really good to learn about people's jobs. People from Puerto Rico who want to maybe go back there and help the mental health there. I met some women who were considering doing that. And also, yeah, that was cool because I asked them about. There's a lot of similarities between Puerto Rico and Cuba as far as America making life worse in both of them. So it
Hmm.
was that was really cool. But yeah, it was definitely like you're there with a lot of people who care and from different backgrounds. And the creators were minority, and we're all just kind of talking as people to everybody.
Cool, cool. So what was after you got out of the airport, man? I have uh seen online there are some creators taking some heat because of this rule or law that's in place by the United States to where if you travel to Cuba, you must stay in a five-star hotel. And of course, some right-wing, fucking talking heads are talking shit about that sort of aspect, but it's not like anybody went to Cuba to willingly, uh, break the law. I mean, that's kind of a requirement of what was
Oh,
going
yeah, if
on
we
there.
stayed someplace where we weren't allowed to, like, yeah, then they would have like we got arrested. So yeah, there's only you have to stay in a foreign-owned hotel. Now there's Airbnbs, if you go with a small group, and those are a little, they're not 5 star or whatever. Now the thing is, the internet is spotty. You can buy a SIM card and maybe it works. Something, I mean, obviously they're under, a lot of blockade and lack of electricity. So you do if you want to have like 140 people, which is what Code Pink was about. Yeah, Code Pink was about 140 people in the same hotel. Are you if you in the same place because this way you don't have to worry about internet. The only places available are these foreign-owned hotels that are all 5 stars. So we had to stay in one. And yeah, it was the only place we could really stay. And it felt weird because yeah, the hotel is not under the same blockade as the rest of the country. They have a generator. I don't know for sure what powers it, but my understanding is that they can import fuel. So if their generator is probably powered by oil or gas that they're allowed to import because they're owned by a foreign company, and then government is not allowed to import that. So they were able to have electricity when no one else did.
So I guess see the foreign policy and blockade is like, hey, if you were a privately owned business, you were eligible to receive shipments of oil. But if you were in any way a nationalized or government owned entity, then they prohibit the receiving of fuel. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of this, because it was never that they were always blockaded. It was always an act of war and, illegal and terrible and kills people. But it was never they don't get any oil until this year. So it's even newer for this year. And some of these rules have happened more recently about the foreign owned companies because they're trying, and they're even maybe going to let some businesses owned by Miami Cubans be part of that. I think I heard something was agreed to the week I went. And the idea is that the capital, because that's the thing, when we were in the hotel, it didn't feel like communism because it's a foreign-owned luxury hotel. So like the place that is nice is the capitalist place, and then there's hospitals where they're like making do with limited power, because the hospitals are still pretty communist. So they're trying to hollow out the communism and create a tier of like foreign-owned stuff that is capitalist and is better off. Because yeah, the U.S. is just setting up some kind of evil board game for Cuba to play.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
contradictory. Is like while this is going on, while you're telling me about this, it's I try to remember that on one side of the planet, the United States is upset about the closing of the Strait of Hormuz and is attempting to actively restrict the flow of oil from, different countries. But is upset that they're not allowed to have oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz and it's affecting our allies and all of that, while at the same time they are restricting the flow of oil to Cuba. And so it just seems really cruelly hypocritical. But I will say that there was a glimmer of good news and hope around a shipment of oil from Russia that by chance was supposed to reach Cuba, and I think that ship has reached there at this point. But I remember seeing that, and
That
I
would be
thought,
great news. I hadn't seen anything about it today, but yeah, they need them. I would
yeah,
just say in general, there's a the goal of the trip. We couldn't bring oil, and we can't make another country bring oil. But our goal was to get it on the radar, get public opinion being like, "What the hell? Why can't they have oil in Cuba in the especially in the hospitals?" And then a country sends oil, and Trump kind of backs off, and then that doesn't solve the blockade, but it gets us back to 2025, which was a more sustainable situation for Cuba, but still quite unfair.
it's my understanding that China sent a bunch of rice, like hundreds of tons, or like 150 tons of rice. I don't know if I have that number or quantity correct, but
Food is helpful. Yeah, food
yeah,
is definitely helpful. Medicine. Like I felt bad. I brought way too much sunscreen because I treated it like it was gonna be a beach vacation. The first day we were on buses in the hotel and then at a convention center hearing the president speak. I didn't use any sunscreen the entire first day. And I could have brought a bunch of like Tylenol instead, so I felt guilty. But I was very worried about not having enough sunscreen.
mm,
So yeah, like yeah, but yeah, it's just people can bring stuff in. But the thing is, yeah, the oil you can't bring in. as a regular person. So the oil
Right.
needs to be someone steps it up and just says that it's enough and let Trump hopefully back off. Because yeah, I mean, obviously anything where there's any kind of people shooting would be terrible.
Yeah.
I would just yeah, and Cuba doesn't deserve that, and I'm sure Cuba would defend itself. I mean, just in general, like yeah, being there, like there's not street crime. I mean, people there was some you saw desperation on the streets. I was on the streets more the second and third day, and a good amount, and saw a lot of poverty. But you didn't see a lot of crime, and you didn't see a lot of cops. So it did seem like the people are, suffering through. I don't know how long they can continue to do that, but it didn't feel like, oh, these people are being held down by like a totalitarian police state or anything. At least that you could see, you didn't see that. And we could just like walk down random streets. We weren't like escorted by anybody. Now we were restricted to, we were in the city center near the Capitol, and then as far as we could walk. But yeah, but yeah, and that's and it was just sad, and yeah, some streets, a lot of streets were pretty clean, but yeah, some weren't, and it's like, oh man, they wish they had oil for the garbage trucks. Um,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah, that's
mean,
it was a kind of a mixed bag what you were saying.
yeah. And I mean, I imagine like any, urban environment has that mix of like, here's where the really nice hotel is, and then here's where the really dirty alleyways are. And I mean, you see that kind of disparity through the streets of New York when you walk through there.
Oh yeah,
So
100%. Just in this case, you would see garbage, and it wasn't like in bags. Like occasionally you would see it, and it's like, okay, this is yeah, and then cats going through it, and it's like, okay, this is I mean, not that like yeah, like okay, it's a country being blockaded, so you'd expect to see worse, but like okay, this is not ideal, and I hope this gets cleaned up because eventually maybe there'd be a lot of rats. I mean, I mean, it was just like okay, this is kind of gross, and and
yeah,
ideally it would get cleaned up. I
I
think there
mean,
might have been people on the trip who helped clean. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, yeah, I felt a little useless because I didn't speak Spanish and I was getting my bearings and learning from people, and then I was only there for a couple days. By the
yeah, I
time because I
mean,
didn't really go on the street. So yeah, I didn't feel it particularly useful, but I was absorbing a lot and also trying to talk to people. And I did a lot of interviews that I'm gonna hopefully put out with people who knew a lot more.
cool, cool. I mean, what you're describing, I mean, if we weren't having a conversation on Cuba, one might imagine we're having a conversation about Midtown on garbage day or
Mm.
something. Like New York does that. They just put their trash, refuse right out on the, sidewalk, and that's where it gets picked up, and rats, huge rats in New York, So, um,
Yeah, and another big thing is, yeah, not, and I didn't have anything compared to, but there was a lot fewer cars in the road, which
sure.
made the city, I believe, a little bit more walkable, which was probably nice because the separation between road and sidewalk, the sidewalks are pretty small, so it made it more walkable. But oh, and I think a lot of people though just they couldn't drive their car and they're probably at home mostly in the dark, and I would imagine that would get pretty, people would be getting pretty stir crazy
Yeah.
with that. So I think that you could feel, yeah, I think people were less happy than they usually would be. But you would see like Saturday night I'm walking around, there's a guy eating fire and performing over in the street, and then the block before there's a lot of kids playing soccer games on the street. So like
Cool.
there's a lot of attempts and like little block parties. So there's definitely attempts to enjoy, but yeah, it's not. It's just if a lot of your life is working, being at home, maybe watching TV, and then driving somewhere, well, two of those three things you can't do with this horrible blockade. So that's going to make your life less fulfilling.
Did you by chance, was there a, I think I saw something where the president of Cuba, met the convoy or something and had
Yeah,
like
he
a
might
bit
have
of a
met him more once,
speech?
but yeah, so it was kind of amazing because like I thought we're going there, we're going to be in the dark. Who knows what we're going to do? You know what I mean? We're gonna be walking and in the dark, and I'm going to be like, I didn't know because and also like then everyone I know is like be safe. Like there's not like street crime in Cuba. So like it's like people, people are very worried. But we get there, we check in the hotel, and then we get on there's some oil, and for what I'm not sure if it comes from private business or whatever, but occasionally we took buses places, not nearly as much as we would have otherwise. So we take a bus to the convention center, which is a beautiful building, and there was no blackout on the first day. The blackout happened the end of the second day, and then most of the rest of the time. So we're in the convention center, and it's a beautiful convention center. Again, things look like freshly painted and nice. And then, I mean, it takes a while, but yeah, all these people speak from the convoy, and then the president spoke for like 2 hours. And it was kind of funny because everyone was tired and hungry, and he keeps talking. But yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, like it definitely made me feel, and I posted a lot of it, it made me feel like, okay, me talking about Cuba is important. And the big thing is not that I'm not an expert on their current government, or to defend like that or whatever. It's about like this talking about why the blockade is bad. And also, yeah, just people should have solidarity with if you care about communism or anti-imperialism, you should have solidarity with an anti-imperialist communist country that's being hassled by their neighbor.
There's a rich history of loquacious heads of state in Cuba. And I go back and look at some of those videos of Castro when he's just, when he's just talking to the people, man. There are other Latin American leaders. Like another president of Mexico was a guy who would like every Sunday, I mean, not the current president of Mexico, but, and I don't recall this gentleman's name, but at least one president back used to go on YouTube like every Sunday morning and he would just talk for hours.
Hugo
And
Chavez had like a 5 hour TV show. Hugo
right,
Chavez, yeah, right.
right.
Took it. That was Venezuela,
Yeah.
obviously, but yeah,
Yeah. And so
yeah,
like
there's talking culture.
when you tell me that this guy, spoke for 2 hours, um, I just think about how like I cannot deal with any Western leader speaking for more than about 10 minutes, and there's never anything of substance or there's always sort of like transparently uh, sort of deception or just angles of ideology that they're trying to sort of corral the public narrative into, or public sentiment into, or uh, so that's pretty
Oh,
amazing. But
one speaker, and it wasn't
yeah,
it. He was good and he was inspiring. I mean, I understood that if I'd heard him speak a lot, he was probably saying a lot of things he usually says
yeah,
about the history and about communism. People have their
yeah.
stock lines. One guy, everyone was speaking in Spanish except for one person who spoke in English, but I had to translate anything. One guy kept calling Trump Caligula, and I thought it was pretty funny. Uh, I mean, Caligula was evil and everything, but Caligula, I think, was at least having sex with people. Trump is like so boring. He doesn't drink, and he doesn't need to have too much sex anymore. So yeah, he's a very lame Caligula
Right,
figure, Trump.
right. Yeah, it's so let me ask you, man, like was there any talk about aside from the embargo, we can talk more about how, what that looks like materially for the Cuban people and stuff. Was there any sentiment expressed while you were there about the United States possibly like invading Cuba or kidnapping a head of state or any other
He may
hostilities
have
like
said
that?
something about how like I don't know if he even mentioned invasion. The
Mm,
problem is that's such a bad scenario. I mean the vibe. I don't know. I can't even remember him saying anything about invading. I mean, I think the vibe is that they would fight to keep their sovereignty.
right.
And I mean, and that in general is the vibe in any country. I mean, obviously, it happened in Ukraine. That yeah, like if another country wants to invade, we're not going to roll over. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you saw occasionally you would see a troop. I was near a monument to Castro where the boat was, the Granma. So, yeah, you would see a troop occasionally. I'm sure they have a plan and everything, but yeah, I mean, yeah, the idea was that he also wasn't like talking about like he's negotiating with Trump, and there's some level of compromising, like I said, with the Cubans in Miami owning businesses. So there's probably a side of him that's a little bit more compromising, but he wasn't showing that to us. And yeah, I'm also us being here. It's kind of like to some extent the cavalry came in because you have a lot more overall the convoy brought a lot of resources and also a lot of attention because yeah, like I said last time, there was a month they didn't get any oil, and then like I didn't even know about it, and then so then it like just people know, yeah, people knowing about it, the Americans were going to know about it, and they're going to have a lot more stuff, and also yeah, I mean a lot of we also brought people we put a lot of cash into the Cuban economy. Hopefully that's helpful. I heard mixed things about how useful just paper money is, but yeah, just I think it was time for him to be defiant. But yeah, I mean, there's just different sides of what's going on. I really just the idea of invading it would just be so terrible. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it would turn out. I mean, obviously a lot of people would die and it would just yeah, it would be wrong and it could be, could be bloody and it would be very sad.
Sure.
I just hope
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. And I also just hope, yeah, like that communism isn't totally hollowed out where it becomes just poor Cubans and then rich people from businesses or whatever from other countries or something like that. So I do hope they can keep, yeah, the egalitarianism that they value. To the extent
Yeah.
they have it. The one thing is like, yeah, the idea that I could tell, I couldn't necessarily like, he's like, we're all workers here and all that. I couldn't tell the wealth of all the Cubans. Like, I'm sure there's some people who are doing a little better than others. I couldn't, that kind of stuff. Like, I would need to spend more time analyzing that.
Yeah.
But America only wants to make that worse.
Yeah, and I mean, not to get too far afield from the focus on Cuba and your trip, um, but I would say on a geopolitical strategy realist level, with what seems like a military defeat impending, and also a ground invasion impending in Iran, uh, it seems that the United States, after all is said and done, will be forced to retreat back into the Western Hemisphere. And from a broader perspective, it seems like, as far as extraction is concerned, uh, Mexico for a labor source and Canada for resources seem like viable, and maybe Greenland in some sense as well. Like all that,
Hmm.
if we're following that realism thread, seems to make a sort of imperialist logical sense to how the United States may seek out to further its sort of hegemony in the Western Hemisphere, once relegated to a regional hegemon. But when I think through that logic as it may pertain to the Cuban island, um, I don't see extractively, imperialistically, what value may come out of uh, recolonizing Cuba, we'll say, or colonizing Cuba uh, under those conditions, like other than having an island for the wealthy or something to that end, you
Yeah, it's
know?
tourism and like kind of it's tourism. It's pleasing older Cuban people in America. The younger
Right.
ones are a lot more supportive of the Cuban government, is what I would. The people I was interviewing were younger. That's what they told me. And it's also just like a cold. Older people are still like very Cold War focused, or like they still feel the Cold War. Like they came of age during it. I was 6 when the wall fell. I feel like you were probably a similar age.
Yeah.
And like there is a level of like, oh, we won the Cold War, whatever, the USSR fell. But like if Cuba's gone, then like America won the Cold War again, or like it's completely won.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
that's really
Yeah, so
interesting.
there is some
Yeah.
level of nostalgia of like make feel like you're Ronald Reagan again or something. But yeah, there's not a lot of. I mean, they have a lot of doctors that it would be great if but I don't think America wants to come up with the doctors. The big industry is tourism, and yeah, it is just a very. That's the number thing. It's like, oh, this is a very beautiful place, and I bet it could be
Yeah.
even better if they could, because you could see a lot of land that maybe could be like maybe they could plant more or something. It felt like there was some maybe undeveloped land. Maybe they could even grow more. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard because I'm only just seeing it, but seeing it
Yeah.
at a slow time. But yeah, like it's just a great place. Like it's a place you'd want to visit or
Yeah.
be or live. So yeah, that I get the desire, but yeah, there's not a lot of resources.
And so, that being said, I would hope that we could, the fact that there's a Russian oil shipment and there's Chinese shipments of rice, like, uh, to that end, that there are Eastern powers supplying this Western island resources. I hope that that is an indication of the strength of the Monroe Doctrine weakening in a way.
Oh, so-
Um, and if we're following this sort of, thread of imperialist logic and the fallout of this Iran war and ultimately how the chips sort of fall, it's not even that far to think that some of South America might partner with, Russia, China sort of thing, at that point. Because if you do want a regional hegemon, then if you have to be under, the semi-vassalage of that, then you probably want that regional hegemon to be far away. Um, but
Yeah, it would be nice if the Caribbean countries could work together.
yeah,
There's all kinds of rules. I don't know that people can go from Puerto Rico to Cuba. So different U.S. rules. Right now. That's not great. So yeah, and yeah, ideally, yeah, the U.S. it can't kick people around. I guess the fear is that Iran goes badly and America gives up, and then Trump's like, I need a win, and he thinks it'll be an easy win like Venezuela.
yeah,
Um, I don't. I would assume that Cuba has like if they kidnapped the president of Cuba, which would be insanely illegal, and they shouldn't do it. That Cuba would have a plan to have a new leadership. So I don't.
well,
The Venezuela thing's very weird because like it kind of like he got it what he thought was he made it seem like a win, and then I think we still have sanctions with them. I doubt life's better for them, and then just the oil doesn't go to Cuba. Like it was the Venezuela felt like a very half done thing. But yeah, and there is I'll let you know, but yeah, there is another thing. Yeah, I learned a lot about how the Cuban grid works and how like things are not that sustainable right now, which is unfortunate.
Sure, sure. Um, yeah, man, I wonder, so what kind of interactions did you have with the folks in Cuba? Like, were there any moments where, I don't know, like, were there any emotionally poignant moments? Were there things where, like, as it occurs to you, were shocking to realize as you were there? Like, what sort of interactions were eye-opening, if any, while you were
And
hanging out?
it wasn't a huge amount because I don't speak Spanish. I mean, there was kids on the street who were happy to see us. They wanted a picture taken or they wanted to hug you. That occasionally happens. I was doing an interview we had a director with a camera and I was interviewing a guy, a street vendor, and I asked him what his day to day was like. And then he was spoken in Spanish. She didn't translate, but apparently he said something very sad. I'm going to find out when I get the video.
Mm,
So that was very sad. At some points, I was giving money to people in the street. People were pretty desperate for money on the street, and they were willing to kind of follow you a couple blocks to give you some, to give them some. And
mm,
then got some pesos. I was at like a block party, and I had some pesos, and I gave to a couple kids, and then all these other kids at the block party like ran up, and I was out of pesos, and I just felt like so weird. Like I felt like I could feel the sadness of the situation. Also, yeah, I mean, I just feel very awkward not speaking the language and everything. So you could see there was a lot, the desperation you would see, and then I didn't know how to compare it, but people would say it was a lot more desperate than normal.
yeah.
But yeah,
Mm.
but the thing is, yeah, in other Latin American countries, Caribbean countries, there'd be more street crime. So there's still ways you can compare them to other countries and how they're less dangerous and maybe doing better.
I
But it
don't know
was
much
yeah.
about your past, Freddie. Have you traveled outside of the country before?
A few times, very touristy. I mean, I went on first time leaving the country was Birthright, which is very touristy. That's to Israel, whatever. And I mean, I wasn't that Zion. I was just like, oh, I want to do a free trip. Then I went to Amsterdam, Rotterdam when I was in the my mid twenties, and then I've gone on a bunch of. I mean, I've been to Canada a lot, but I mean, Canada it just feels like a nicer U.S.
Right.
So it's not super different. Yeah, obviously, yeah. I mean, it's different in like a nice, fun way. But then I'd been to Belize and Curacao on like honeymoon type vacation, so you saw some poverty, but it was also like it was mostly you going through the poor areas in a taxi cab.
Right,
But
right.
this was we were walking around, and also yeah, it's people at their worst or whatever, because just they yeah like it's just especially kids kids haven't been through that much, and then all of a sudden there's no electricity.
So you were
Um,
mostly on the western side of the island in Havana. So,
Oh yes, okay. So I was only in Havana. We flew into
right.
Havana. We would occasionally take a bus like from the airport to the hotel and then to the convention center. But it was mostly just within Havana. So I haven't that's the thing is I haven't seen that much of Cuba. I saw mostly them. And the thing is also people it was weird because people are living and they don't have a lot of money. And then we're in the hotel and we have money. And so you would come out and it's like, like there's it's like, okay, we can, but we're here to help you guys and we'll give you some money. But it just the whole thing was it was just like it was awkward. Like it's just not it just didn't feel right. And then also it was unclear like should we be giving them lots of dollars? Should we be giving them pesos? Like what are is or should we be giving them medicine? Like what is actually helping and what because if an island is poor and then you give them like a lot of American dollars, then does that just create black markets? Like I was just trying to kind of understand it. It was a lot for me to understand. I didn't have a lot of time to understand it. So I was generous, and then I was trying to also just do the right stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
man, I will say it now you're kind of describing some things to me that resonate with some of the times that I've spent in Mexico. And the kind of poverty like, that one witnesses in Mexico is heartbreaking and desperate, but as an example, right? Like, so like you're telling me about the kids following you around, and in Mexico, I mean, at least in my experiences, it's been at least 25 years since I've been in Mexico now. But,
oh, interesting.
because I grew up on the border, and so like growing up on the border was like, oh, you go get your prescription filled, you go to the dentist there, you go shopping for the day, you eat in a really nice restaurant that costs you like maybe Olive Garden prices, and you uh and it's like a tourist, but there's also the opposite where like the very wealthy Mexicans come across to the malls and eat at the fucking Olive Garden that's next to the mall on the US side,
Oh,
as
yeah.
well, um but in terms of like I just poverty that really hurts, that you can feel in your chest as you witness it. Like, kids would follow me around with little boxes of gum called chiclets, and they, chiclet, chiclet is what their refrain is, and they say it over and over again. And you have to buy something from them, or else they'll just follow you for blocks on end. And the other side of that was there were, um, I personally seen along the bridge and the border where kids will take the handle of a plastic jug, like a gallon jug of milk that's empty, and then cut half the other side out of the jug in order to have the handle and a bowl underneath that it's attached to. And somehow they throw that over the fence and use a stick to place it into the handle, and they hold the stick out to extend it over to tourists as they pass by for spare change and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I did a job describing that, but to
And
see it,
reasonably, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes
but
sense if you
yeah,
figured it out how to do it. Yeah, yeah, and
and
they could
to
be
see like
changing a milk show.
the inventiveness of young children in poverty is something that, stays with you. So, I wish to ask you in terms of like the portion of Cuba that you saw. Was there any moment other than like I mean, you described a couple of them, like
The
kids when
whole
you're out
thing,
of,
yeah,
yeah,
I knew I was privileged, like I understood it, but I felt it and it felt bad. I just felt bad. Like it's like, okay, like, what I mean? I got like, I have, let's say you have like $100 worth of fives in your pocket, but you might need to go to like, because you got to pay cash when you go to a restaurant or because they're off you can't use like a credit card in Cuba.
yeah,
And it's like, oh, this is like an insane amount of money to the people walking around. It's like, this is all like, this is no good. And yeah, it felt bad. Yeah, I just felt my privilege in a way that was upsetting, and that's good. It's good for me, and I should keep helping. But it wasn't, yeah, like but yeah, I felt stuff I hadn't felt before. I'm 42, so yeah,
yeah,
that's what,
yeah.
yeah, because
So
I'm glad I got to feel it, but yeah, it's not,
and
it's
this
made me
is
sad, and I also just don't want to seem like a jerk talking about it because yeah, but yeah, I'm not gonna paint like, oh man, like yeah, like it was good that we went and we did, man, I think the trip did its best and was, and all that. But yeah, it's like you're gonna feel like because the where you were born affects so much, and yeah, you feel it, and it's sad.
yeah, yeah. It's like just the geographical luck of everyone's life. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I think that in terms of like degrees of luck one must have in order to end up on the right side of an imaginary line. If you end up 10 miles from that line, does that also mean that you almost got severely unlucky for your lot in life,
Yeah.
Like that I was born 20 minutes, from the Mexican border on the US side? Does that, I mean, that's, you know what I'm trying to say. But
No, it's crazy. Yeah, I was
this is
thinking.
a
Yeah.
really interesting conversation though, man, because in our last discourse we talked a little bit about Gusanos and those Cubans that resent the Cuban Revolution and want the island to have a quote unquote regime change or what have you, or wish, you know, the people with that kind of perspective. And one thing that I in terms of my own political journey, I have found the hardest conversations in politics to have are often with folks that have like dual citizenship, like in Texas specifically, like people that have come from Mexico that either were part of the Mexican wealthy, because wealthy in Mexico doesn't mean like, you know, there's still precarity. I mean, your wealth doesn't get you shit when a cartel member is holding a rifle to your car down the street or something,
Mhm.
So that kind of stuff is still there. But the hardest conversations, because I'm coming from the perspective of like, hey, I have seen the poverty in this world that that affects your heart in such a way that you feel your privilege that you're just speaking to, right? So when I've seen the kids carrying the chiclets and the kids with the milk jugs, I have carried that with me my entire life to understand that living in the imperial core, this shit has to burn. Like I've become a revolutionary communist out of understanding the disparity between the poverty that exists in this world beyond which we see in our everyday life in the global north, right? Versus the privilege that we carry there too. But the folks that have come from that poverty and seek to defend the United States because of their increase in quality of life from being here, those people I have the most difficult conversations with, I feel like, because on the one hand, they almost flip this script. It's like that, it's like I'm coming to this conversation with I've witnessed the poverty that the United States uh is sort of like affects on the rest of the world by way of their foreign policy, by way of their wealth accumulation and all of that. But they kind of flip that perspective where they're like, hey, you don't know how good you have it. And you should shut the fuck up because I know what it's like and I've lived there. And so it's just a really difficult interaction that way. Um, and that's totally probably really aside from what
Yeah, and a
this,
lot of the people, yeah, a lot of the people who came during the 90s, and I'm sure it was terrible because that was a special period. But yeah, the one thing is, yeah, no, almost no one's, because we've been blockading them for so long that yeah, like it's hard, yeah, because people who grew up in the 90s or whatever, they grew up under the blockade or at least some version of it, so it's hard for them to separate it all out.
yeah,
Um,
man.
it is just crazy because Obama made things a lot better, and they like him in Cuba. I mean, I don't like him, but I get why they like him. And then it was so close because if Hillary had won, maybe she wouldn't have done what Trump did to Cuba, and their whole lives would be so different. And obviously, it's not an election they get to vote in or anything. So it's just really like
Right.
little random things in that election affected Cuba a lot because yeah, Obama versus Trump on Cuba is no question. Yeah, even if the Democrats and Republicans are the same on whatever 90 or whatever amount percent of issues, they weren't the same on Cuba with Obama and Trump.
God, dude, don't make me register to vote, bro.
Oh
Cause like,
yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
I mean, I think about that too. That's a
James
great point.
Tallarico, he would be a lot better for the Senate. Yeah, I mean it's up to obviously
Yeah.
I don't vote shame people, but Tallarico versus I don't know the name of the Republican nominee, but whoever it is, Tallarico would be a lot
Uh,
better.
Garrett or something like that, right? Who is Tallarico?
They might have had a run. I'm confused.
The guy that was bragging about having a copy of Mein Kampf.
Oh,
Is
that's
it
crazy.
Brandon, whatever the fuck this asshole's name is? Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy that Tallarico is running against was on a podcast bragging about how he had some, I don't know, special edition of Mein Kampf. He's one of these guys that's running ads with like he's literally holding like an extended mag machine gun out of a helicopter, and but he's come under some scrutiny for that sort of stuff too. Um, what can I say about that dude? At least he's not that other chick that was like tying uh uh was like hay in a bag to look like a human body and saying that people are illegal and shooting the fucking thing to the head.
There's
Like
a
just
lot. Things keep getting crazier. Yeah,
it
we're in a
keeps
very
yeah, man,
yeah.
it's really crazy. So it's like I'll take the guy who is
Eh.
trying to spread Christian love, who says God is non-binary, and like
Oh
I'll
yeah, it's
take
kind of
that.
clever. That's kind of it's clever because there's weird gender things. I was trying to work on a bit, but yeah. I did want to say another thing about the problem with what's going on in Cuba now, and I hope they get far and all because it's not sustainable. The reason they have power sometimes is Cuba does have some oil. They're able to like get like they about 40% of what they need, but it's like low quality oil. The Venezuela oil was high quality. This is low quality. So it degrades their grid because there's no way for them to make it like clean up. It has too much sulfur. Sulfur is the bad part of oil.
Mm,
So over time, they're getting power like 40% of the time, whatever. And then there's solar supplementing as well, which helps. But solar's not going to work at night. You need
right.
batteries that they don't have. I don't know how good the battery technology is for solar, but I don't think we're there with night solar. That would be an amazing thing if we had night solar. But we might be I don't we probably decades away from that. In my guess, not being an expert on this, but so the Cuba's degrading their grid with their own oil, and then over time, just it'll be less and less reliable. So over
Right.
time, they'll have less and less power. So they need foreign oil one way or the other. Yeah, that's why countries need to send them oil and tell America to stop being so full of itself.
Yeah, and I don't
And
know if right now is the time for Cuba to raise his hand and be like, "Hey, can we play for this oil and yuan?" Like, come on. I don't. I know it's a blockade and shit.
oh yeah, yeah.
Like, it's just maybe not good politics right now for them to do that sort of thing. But yeah. So you're back from Cuba, man, and you met Ryan Grimm, which is super cool. I'm a fanboy of Ryan Grimm, and and you seem to have absorbed a lot while you were there. Um, so let me ask you about like coming back to the US and feeling the disparity between Cuba and there and the privilege that you have and all that stuff, man. Like, is anything here in the United States striking you differently in the last couple days than uh, thanks to your
I
time in
did
Cuba?
notice like waiting on the line to go to TSA in Miami. Like this line is so long, and it took forever to get my bed. Like I was some things I was like, this was more efficient in Cuba. Um, the thing was that it would have felt different if I hadn't been staying. The hotel was felt a little bit like America.
Yeah.
So that was a problem. And then also it was I'm so addicted to this internet and social media. It was just so nice to have social media all the time again because we had it some of the time at the hotel, which is really not roughing it at all. But it was
Right.
just so nice. I mean, it made me want to tell people about Cuba and all that. And then it did seem weird coming back. It's like, oh yeah, the Iran thing is a bigger deal here.
Mm.
And I mean it should be, but yeah, it's like yeah. It's just yeah, it's just weird how much is going on. And then yeah, the Cuba could be a side thing, but like we're their whole existential thing over there. So their errors are defined by how our presidents act, and that seems so wrong.
Right. Right. Can I ask you what the cuisine was like there? Like, what'd you have to eat, man?
There was a good amount of I don't know if it's because they just fish. The hotel kept having seafood. And it's like I feel like an asshole. Like, oh, like I had lobster a couple times. I mean, like, it wasn't actually like I'm not really yeah, like it was like why are we? It felt the food felt too good. There was some limit there. I mean, there was some limits where like oh they didn't have beef, so like the menu had beef listed and they couldn't get it. I guess that comes from someplace where they have to deliver it. But yeah, it felt like we were eating too good, and yeah, it didn't feel right being in this nice hotel. But then also like I'm hungry and there's only so much on the menu and I'm trying to like eat keto, so I might order the fish.
Mm.
But
Mm.
yeah, if it was guilt inducing and weird.
Did you have a chance to like at least, like get out and and have street food at all or
I mean, there were people selling vegetables. I think this stuff's limited. I'm not sure what kind of street vendors they normally have, but I feel like it's limited like maybe they have a card and they don't have gas for it.
mm,
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know the one thing is like other people had something to compare to and I didn't.
yeah.
But I
Um,
didn't. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I think they're cooking like in their houses with wood stoves. I'm not really. Yeah, I wasn't.
yeah.
When you were out, it was like they said have snacks and people had snacks. It wasn't. I mean, you could go to a restaurant, but like, yeah, like I wanted to go to the art museums. We were next to it, and like it's closed because of the blackouts. Like it was a limited
Mm,
event. It was definitely. It would be stupid if this is the only time I ever went to Havana because Havana is amazing and it's a beautiful place, and I'm sure the rest of Cuba is amazing. And it's like you saw a very limited version of it. And I was
yeah.
only there for a couple of days because the first day was really just seeing the president's us flying in, seeing the president's speech, and then going out to dinner which I kind of all had to do because we had to kind of like, communicate with everybody. So
Yeah.
I it was really 2 days. And then the third day, I just did a lot. I did a lot, like I said, a lot of interviews that I'm hopefully going to put out stuff.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, and the big thing with the Cubans for Cuba, they very much seem like the anti-Zionist Jews of Miami.
Mm,
So I had a lot of parallels, and I asked them about that. And yeah, but yeah, anyhow, so yeah, just it was I don't yeah, there's probably a lot of things that people will say that are great in Havana, like possibly street food, and I just didn't get to experience it. Um, and also I think it would be good staying in the most touristy areas, you're not going to get a real feel of a city. So I do think
sure.
if people came and stayed in an Airbnb in a different neighborhood, it would be better because the gap between rich and poor at the five-star hotels versus the people in the street outside who know that it's a great place for asking for money, that gap is just jarring and it's not the same everywhere.
Mm,
So it's yeah, it was but and the other thing is yeah, people can go. I mean, they have to figure it out and there'll be more group trips and everything. And yeah, it's important people keep going and because yeah, like Hassan's not going back next week, but other people need to go and yeah, like keep the attention on. Because yeah, there's room for Trump to back off with this oil thing. And it seemed like there was like there was about Dan there was the Miami Cubans were kind of like celebrating a little bit in certain social media clips, like it's about to fall. And I saw one of those was on a sports talk show, old Dan Levitard, and then I was looking for it when I got back, and they may have taken that clip off of their Instagram. So there's some level of like they were trying to kind of will it into existence that Cuba was about to fall. And then now it feels like it's backed off a little bit. And that could be good because then someone sends oil and Trump backs off, I'm hoping. I
Mhm.
am always an optimist. But because them getting oil in and at least, yeah, like I said, getting back to where they were in 2025 would be a big thing.
So,
And then hopefully later on we can make things even better.
right. Well, I did my best to sort of monitor your trip and a lot of other convoy travelers out there on social media. And something like, I think Saturday night, I was up pretty late and I saw a series of tweets by a person on Twitter. The first uh, thing that he had taken was a picture of like a half lit hospital. And he was like, man, that this hospital is half lit and the rest of the Cuba's in the dark makes me, it's a strange sort of scare, but also like pissed off sort of emotions, followed by another tweet where he had said that a friend of his mentioned that every person on a ventilator that night had died. And
Yeah, and
and
the ventilator thing wasn't true. Yeah, the
right,
people.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yes, and
Yeah, like
I'm not sure how that
I
started or whatever, and that was very yeah.
well,
It
it
was too
started from
bad.
that.
Thing.
Yeah, it started from that tweet,
Yeah.
and apparently that person was claiming that he had run into somebody on the street and they had mentioned that everyone on a ventilator had died that
Oh,
night, right?
yeah.
And so,
Information within Cuba is quite imperfect. Lack of media. It could be even that it could be American propaganda services that like. I'm not sure. I mean, I wasn't exactly sure how they're getting information, and I'm sure America's trying to feed them bad information.
yeah, and there's also, bless you, by the way, there's also
But yeah, the hospitals have generators. I don't know how those generators work or how they're getting fuel.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
there's not there, and they're really. I mean, it's Herculean. I wish I
So
had gone to a hospital. I honestly did not go to the right places
so
and see
so
everything for you go.
Well, Justin Medina, a friend and comrade that I follow on social media as well, uh, I think you're probably referring to the same social media post that I read, where she was like, "Hey, you know what? This didn't happen, and what happens is there's a switch over in the generators when power goes out, and there's 5 or 6 minutes usually before the generators kick in, and so whenever that happens, doctors drop everything they're doing." And they use their phones as flashlight and they race over to the NICU so they can use ventilators by hand until the
Okay.
generators come up. Um or the
It's so
not the
weird
NICU,
because
but
in
like
America, like I used to work for like a credit card company, and like they wouldn't let the credit card company servers go down for that long, or they wouldn't want, you know what I mean? Like
right, right.
it's
Yeah.
just so yeah.
But
But yeah,
I
it's yeah, people really that is one thing. It felt like a privilege and also felt like I should be careful what I talk about. Like I felt weird mentioning that we had seafood a couple times because like, that could be used against us. But yeah, it was just it's like yeah,
sure.
it's just it was a responsibility to be there and to have electricity and stuff. And I tried to at least be careful with stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, someone ideally it would have been someone who spoke Spanish would have been there instead of me and who didn't bring so much sunscreen and maybe they would have been more helpful. But at least I am going to try my best to bring as much attention as I can. But yeah, it was very humbling and yeah, I'm not,
Well, I appreciate your
yeah.
truthfulness and
Yeah,
humility
I
on
was one of
this,
the
man.
less, yeah, other people on
Yeah,
the thing were much more heroic and yeah, and useful and but yeah, I mean I definitely had great intentions. Also there was a thing of like you could videotape on the streets, kind of see, but like don't just like don't put out like poverty porn or whatever. Like
sure,
my goal
sure.
is like the content, maybe there'll be a couple Cubans in it. And obviously the one the street vendor we talked to, he was paid and he agreed to be on camera and stuff, but I'm not gonna I'm not wasn't trying to take pictures of kids looking poor like some kind of Save the Children ad. So
Right.
there was definitely a thing where like you could be irresponsible and don't and do stay morally good and don't try to like exploit people for views. Which I think yeah, and I hopefully people mostly stuck to that. I know I did.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so two things about hospital stuff, man. You know, so I saw that Ryan Grimm also had a tweet that was like he was in a hospital and he noticed that there was like a random plastic jar that had been rejiggered into a urine collector and mounted to the side
Mm.
of the bed. And, on the one hand, we're so kind of standardly used to, IV bags and medical PPE stuff that's sterile and in plastic. And a lot of the world doesn't function exactly by those standards, not because of, I mean, because of poverty, because of resources, because of what's at their disposal, right? Um, so, when I saw that rejiggered plastic jug, it kind of reminded me of the same repurposed milk jug thing that I told you about the
Mm.
kids with the sticks. It's like, yeah, you have to work with what you have, especially on an island that is embargoed. And the other thing I was going to say,
Yeah. And
you
they
know,
have, I mean, at least until recently, I mean, they have great life expectancy. Like they're medically, they do a lot. And they have, I mean, I didn't get to confirm, but they talk about like 99% literacy rate. Like there's things that they do amazingly, probably better than other similar countries that are not embargoed. So there's a
yeah,
lot, they have a lot to be proud of. But those stats are obviously all from before this year. And then, if things drop because of this no oil, that could happen.
yeah, and like, so going back to this Justine Medina post, man, which obviously I shared that, and I got a bit emotional that night thinking about this, and I wrote a long post about the murderous nature of foreign policy by the United States and stuff. And yeah, there is a perspective of like, hey, this, and I'm personally very happy that not everybody died that night on ventilators. That's a good thing.
Thank God, it's so sad.
Yeah. Um, but that also doesn't cover incubators or dialysis stuff. That's not the only medically urgent power needing thing, right? And
Yeah, people must be dying. I mean, the thing is, I mean, I didn't visit a hospital. There was no way for me to have any data. But yeah, people are unnecessary dying every day, and and it's very, very sad.
yeah, it's like whereas like I'm happy for the correction that Justine, wrote up, and it's very important. And but I would also say that it doesn't cover dialysis. It doesn't cover uh incubators. It There's a lot of that. Yeah, there's a it regardless. U.S. foreign policy is murderous. And a lot of the United States seems indifferent towards the murderous nature of a foreign policy. And so I'm really happy that you guys went and brought some attention uh, to Cuba and their needless
Mhm.
suffering, by this embargo. Um, and the other thing I would say is that, you know what, man, when my mother was dying in hospice, the power went out during a storm, and she had one of these striker beds that, like,
Oh no.
basically, right? And so when the power went out, I arrived at the hospital when the power was out to find her sort of just like this, just enveloped in this inflatable bed, because
That's
like the
very
power had,
scary.
right. So like this shit, even in American hospitals, is not cool, man. Like this, it happens, and that sort of shit happens. And so
Yeah, the
I just,
Texas grid is yeah. I mean, I haven't had experience
yeah,
with it, but the Texas grid is questionable. There's a
it's
lot of
very
issue. Yeah, we
questionable.
look down on your grid in the other states.
Yeah.
Now I'm in New York. I'm not that New York hasn't had its power problems, especially during Sandy. But yeah,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but
They'll ruin every grid if the Capitals will ruin every grid if they could.
well,
And
it's
it's a problem.
New York doesn't insist on having its own fucking grid that is
Yeah, yeah.
dilapidated and all that stuff, right? Not to mention, I mean, I live near Corpus Christi, and Corpus Christi had all of downtown was darkened last night because there was a worker who unfortunately died inside of inside of the sewer manhole. It's a story around town right now. So it's like, I mean, the
That's very
power,
sad.
yeah, it's fucked up. It's I mean, there's the we look at buildings and roads and we see structure, order, and convenience, but rarely do we see what this costs in terms of worker lives. Like every building has somebody somewhere that's like made worse or dead because of it. I feel like, roads, railroads, all of this stuff can be weighed in terms of the lives of workers towards its
This
construction as well. So
The Empire State Building is super stupid. Like six people died making it. They started building it after the Depression had started, it never, I mean, maybe eventually it got full, but it was called the Empty State Building. So like it looks kind of cool, but it should never have happened. They could have spent those resources helping the New Yorkers.
Right.
It was, yeah, it's so there's a lot of BS with that.
So let me ask you
With
about like the legacy of the revolution in Cuba, though, man. Like, did you? I mean, I saw a picture of Chris Smalls by a mural of Che Guevara there, and we talked in anticipation of you going to Cuba about the how alive the revolution and Marxism is
Oh yeah, a
there.
lot of people said I look like Fidel with the beard. I mean, there was people in the street. They might have, been trying to flatter me, but yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, Fidel and Che are still, yeah, iconic. Or they're, that's their equivalent of the founding
I would have
fathers.
said you're more like Engels, dude, with
Yeah,
beard max and stuff going on.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
They probably,
yeah,
yeah. I'm sure plenty of Cubans have red angles, but yeah, not. I don't know if people. I don't even know what he looks like actually. I don't know if Angles is. Yeah, I'll have to see a picture of him.
yeah,
And there's
yeah.
some other, yeah. So yeah, there's definitely that, but there is a lot of, I guess, just to me, the revolution, it feels like a long time ago. So that stuff's cool to talk about, but then what's going on there now is, so many years later. And then you would kind of want to stay in tune with like the more modern situations.
So last question here, man. What do you think people here in the United States just don't get about Cuba?
That it's safe to go to. Um, yeah, that it's not riddled with crime, and yeah, the people are to be admired because there's a lot of good, like this country's done a lot of good things, and then the people are not like they're suffering through it. They're not, it's not chaos or whatever, and they're not being like beaten down by cops every 5 seconds. Like it's just people living their lives. Um, yeah, I think that is important. And also just like they're even though they're like not imperialistic, they're very much under the thumb of the US. So you being willing to talk about when America's being extra cruel to them is important. So like saying for like, oh, I'm not Cuban. I don't know, whatever think people justify. No, everyone should talk about Cuba and that we should be giving them oil. It's also simpler there's complicated situations in the world. You know what I mean? Like, oh, getting the UAE to stop killing people in Sudan, that would probably be more complicated than letting Cuba get some shipments of oil. Same thing with Israel Palestine. Like, yeah, Israel Palestine, America has a lot more control than some other things, but this one's even just let some oil in, and then ideally the Democrats get rid of the blockade when they have power, or maybe Trump even like rolls it back or whatever. If that would be kind of a miracle though, but. Yeah, so it's very much America has a lot of power to make things better, and that the things that are causing them harm aren't scary communism. It's really the blockade. And then when the blockade was gone, then then you could look at see how they were doing and maybe critique, well, the communism's doing this well and not this other thing well, or this is
Mm.
to the extent they have communism. But the blockade is America's doing it, and it's been made worse this year, and then it's important for everyone to speak up about it. And yeah, and they need it, and they're our neighbors, and our neighbors are in trouble, so we should step up and show that we care. And yeah, if you can go there, that would be helpful too. And you can go with other groups, or you could even just book your own plane ticket and get your own visa. I mean, there's a little bit of paperwork, but yeah, so it's not something that's far away and out of your control. It's right here, and how Americans feel about it, I think will matter because Trump does look at popular opinion, and to the extent we have a democracy, it matters, and we need to keep fighting for us to have a democracy and for that democracy to do good things.
Cool. Well, Freddie, thank you for taking the time to hang out and tell us about your trip today. I would love to have you back in a little bit to
Yeah.
talk more about the Israel-Palestine, Iran, and the war, the fallout, all that stuff. So we'll probably be seeing you in a few days.
Oh, I'd love
Uh,
to. Yeah, and it still is insane that BB was able to get Trump to actually do the war. It's not that Israel doesn't control America, but this one Israel kind of sparked, and it was always the dumbest thing an American president could do, outside of like getting some kind of weird nuclear war. So it's insane that it actually happened, and it's now been going on for like 20 something days. It's just complete insanity.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like Operation Baboon Rosa at this point, you know, like it's just really like the greatest strategical military error followed up by what will also be the most egregious error of a ground war if that happens too, which seems to be happening Friday. Like we're all, you know,
That's yeah, I've been hearing people say that. That's bad.
it's
I don't
really
know. I don't
bad.
know if that
Yeah,
makes it harder to back off. I'm not, yeah. I always try to be optimistic. I don't the idea of a ground war, I don't, yeah. How many troops would it be? Because it's this huge country and there's mountains and there's 90 million people. It's hard for me to wrap my head. I'm gonna, hopefully people will explain what that would look like. I mean, you don't need to know much to be against. Like my mom doesn't know much about Iran, but she's just against war. So like, yeah, like, oh, that you don't need to know much, but I would like to understand it a little better. I certainly hope it doesn't
sure.
happen. Um,
Right. Yeah. Well, Freddie, we'll see you in a couple days. Thanks for listening, everybody. And Freddie, where can people find you?
So yeah, still at Orange Freddy G, yeah, on all the social media and YouTube. And yeah, I'm gonna be posting stuff from like interviews I did. Interviewed a doctor from Niger that was kind of amazing. And just yeah, different people on the trip. And some might also be if stuff is comes out amazing, and I can get it subtitled because some people were speaking Spanish. It might be longer form video on my YouTube, so it'd be good to sub to me there at Orange Freddy G. And then yeah, whatever your favorite social media is, I post a lot of the same videos and try to get the same takes out there. And yeah, appreciate everyone's support and listening this far to this trip that I took that I yeah I was scared about. I'm really glad that I did.
All right.